So, Mark here from Rock and Load. This afternoon, I am joined by the one, the only Mr. Conor Selby. Conor is a British blues artist who in 2023 released his major label self-titled debut album, courtesy of Provogue, and had a fantastic year touring with the likes of Robert Cray, Beth Hart, and Kenny Wayne Shepherd. He's kicking off 2024 all over again with the great and wonderful Joanne Shaw Taylor, starting off in Amsterdam before coming to the UK and Manchester on February 17th. So make sure you check out gigantic.com, planetrock.co.uk, and of course, joanneshawtaylor.com for tickets. Conor, thank you very much for taking the time to join me today.
My pleasure.
So give us a bit of a blurb about Conor Selby as the artist, and like how did you get to where you are today?
That's quite a big question. Well, first and foremost, I see myself as a blues artist, but obviously blues is quite a broad term and means a lot of different things to many different people. Um, I guess generally I'm just inspired by American roots music, really.
Yeah.
That includes soul, gospel music, country music, all that stuff. And it all kind of plays a part in terms of my sound.
Yeah. And so, like, who was responsible for your musical education?
Um, well, I suppose, like many people, my parents had a big impact on me, particularly my dad. He was the one who first kind of exposed me to music in the first place, I suppose. But he mainly listened to like classic rock and stuff, like
Yeah, yeah.
Led Zeppelin, and Deep Purple, and he's a big Richie Blackmore fan. And that was my starting point, really, all that kind of music and Cream and early Fleetwood Mac and everything. But I gravitated more towards the blues side of things, particularly Eric Clapton. And he was kind of the catalyst, really, in terms of opening the door to the wider stuff, and going back and finding out what inspired him, and then discovering people like Freddie King and Otis Rush and BB King and Buddy Guy and all these people, and then just kind of just trying to learn as much about the music as I could and discover um, as many great players and musicians as I could, really.
Yeah, yeah. And was your father a guitar player?
No, he doesn't play. He plays a bit of drums, but just as a hobbyist, really.
Yeah, yeah. And so when did you actually pick up the instrument yourself?
I think when I was about 8 years old, I first started. I mean, I kind of started playing the guitar before I really had an interest in music. I know that sounds silly, but
Mm.
I started playing at school, and I've been playing the violin a bit prior to that. I've given that up many, many years ago, but yeah, it wasn't until a couple of years later when around that time when I was exposed to the music I was just talking about that I really developed a love and an interest for it, and it kind of worked, hand in hand with one another. I was discovering new music and being inspired by new stuff and trying to figure out how to play it, and the whole kind of journey and the excitement of that really propelled my kind of development as a guitar player.
Yeah. And did you always sort of gravitate then towards like the blues and the roots music? And did that sort of shape your musical sort of journey then throughout the whole time?
Yeah, that's always been the constant, really. The
Yeah.
blues is always, ever since that time, it's been the kind of foundation of really, my entire identity, really. And of course, since then, my tastes have changed and developed and stuff, but the blues has always been the base. And I've really developed a love for jazz and old school R&B and soul and folk music and all kinds of different styles. But yeah, the kind of meeting point of all those things is the blues, certainly.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. Because I was listening to your album earlier on just to familiarize myself with it once again. And it's quite a sedate album. It's quite chilled. So I'm assuming that's a reflection really of your personality and your musical tastes and the music obviously that you want to play yourself as well.
Yeah, yeah, it is. I mean, I guess, yeah, I mean, it is just a reflection of the way I am. I suppose I'm quite mellow and slow, and yeah, I guess that reflects in the music. But yeah, I mean, that's just the music I really love to listen to. I really love kind of more. I mean, the thing is, for me, it's like the most important quality for music in terms of how it inspires me is really the emotional content of the music.
Yeah.
And I think when there's more space in music, it's much easier or it's more effective when it comes to, creating that kind of emotional connection with an audience. Like obviously I love music that's upbeat and, like all that kind of stuff. But I respond more to the stuff that's more kind of emotionally driven.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, it's something that really connects with audiences. If you think of even in the more pop culture world, an artist like Ed Sheeran, for example, his success is really built on emotional sort of songwriting that he has read across his album. The stuff usually released in the on the radio tends to be the lighter side stuff, but really it's probably an emotional connection, really simple acoustic guitar and good quality lyrics and melodies, which has drawn in such a massive audience for him.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'm a sentimentalist at heart, really, and
Mm.
that kind of sentimental element to the music is really important to me, and that's why a lot of my songs tend to be more kind of slow and I guess sentimental in style
Yeah,
and lyrically
yeah. But
speaking.
like I say, there's obviously a demand and a hunger for that sort of stuff as well. It may not be what the radio stations necessarily pump out all the time that we hear, but when people pick up an album, sometimes that's the stuff that they really gravitate towards, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's different for different people. Obviously, some
Yeah,
people just want to be entertained, and that's great, and that there's a place for that music. But yeah, when it comes to what I'm doing and what I'm trying to achieve, um, yeah, I mean, like I say, it's all about the kind of emotional response in people, and people also buying into me as a person and buying into my music, because ultimately it's an extension of me,
yeah,
and
yeah,
um, I'm not shy about that. I try and put myself as much into my music as I can, really, and I think it's very important to be open and to be vulnerable and to show sides of yourself that maybe aren't necessarily your strongest attributes or whatever,
yeah.
I think it's important to show weakness and and yeah, that's why I tend to write about that sort of stuff, and that's why my music is the way it is in terms of the tone of it.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think people will always appreciate honesty in music, especially because we've all been there. We all have that side to us, As you say, some people are purely fun and party and love those up tempo stuff all the time, but it's not a reality. It's not a reflection of reality in life. Some of us like to soak up music and really absorb it and breathe and live it a different way. So we do. So horses for courses in this music industry. That's why it's such a broad and wonderful thing, isn't it? With so many genres and subgenres.
Yeah, of course. I mean, my music, like I say, it's just an extension of me, and you know, um, every single person is different, and every single person is going to respond to what I'm doing differently, and that's the great thing about art in general.
Yeah.
If someone's feeling in a particular mood or they want to listen to that kind of thing, then that's what I'm there for. But equally, music that is all about entertaining and having a good time, we need that just as much.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And
Especially,
so,
the way things are with the
yeah,
world at the moment.
absolutely, man. Yeah, yeah, for sure. And so, tell me a little bit about your musical journey as a live musician. When did you actually get out and start gigging then?
I think I was probably about 16, 17 when I started doing it properly.
Hmm. And have you always focused on originals, or were you doing sort of cover band sort of stuff at the start?
I never really did proper cover band stuff. I mean, obviously the songwriting thing has been an ongoing thing and it's been developing over the years. But I think it was always my intention to go out as myself as opposed to playing the music of other people. Obviously, I play covers and stuff, and one a thing that I always talk about in my shows is that it's really important to me that people understand the music that inspired me and the fact that the blues has such a rich history, and it's very important to go back and listen to the real stuff.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's funny sometimes, I suppose, especially maybe the younger generation as well, but we're probably all guilty of it at times to picking up on new artists and not really understanding maybe what those artists were inspired by and where they have came from on the journey that they've been on, because it all goes back so far, and it's really important sometimes if you want to develop yourself as a musician to fully understand, the journey and the legacy of where it all came from initially.
Yeah, I mean that's the fun of it for me, really. That's been the most exciting part of being a musician and learning about music. Just discovering all that stuff and learning about the history of it and the social implications of it, and because it's all intertwined. And obviously, the blues has a particularly kind of troubled history, and it's important to bear that in mind, especially being an English guy playing the blues in the 21st century.
Yeah.
I understand that I'll never be like the people who I love, but all I'm really trying to do is just kind of take that feeling that they make me feel, kind of pass it on to someone else, while also recognizing where it came from in the first place, you know.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. And tell me, do you have a sort of particular process when you're songwriting? Do you just look, for example, on an acoustic guitar, piano, or electric? Any particular way you like to tackle it?
I mean, I don't really have a process as such. It's something that I don't really feel I have much control over in a way, you know. Um, but I suppose when it comes to writing, I normally do just start with an acoustic guitar because it's just the best way to do it, I think. I can't play the piano or any other instrument, and the acoustic guitar is just the perfect thing to sort of pick up in the moment
Yeah,
and play and get a good sound out of. But yeah, I mean, like I said, I don't really have a specific process. I just kind of, you know, occasionally an idea will come and I'll write it down or record it, and then maybe I won't listen to it for a while. Maybe it will happen really quickly, you know. Sometimes it's the case that I write a song in like an hour, and other times it will take months or even years, you know. It's just one of
totally.
those things. I'm not the kind of person who can just sit down and say, "Oh, I need to write, so I'm going to write something," and then, you know, I don't have a really methodical approach to it. It's very much just when, you know, inspiration hits you, and then kind of learning to act on that when it does come.
Yeah. And as a young musician, then, did you sort of have a band around you that you sort of worked with consistently, and maybe that you write with at all?
I mean, yeah, I've always had people around me, I guess, that I've played with. Obviously, it's changed over the years. Um, but yeah, I mean, for the most part, I write on my own. Some of my songs have input from other people. There's a guy who he used to play with me in my band who's has now left, called Joanne, and he wrote some songs with me. He wrote one of the songs on my album Emily, which tends to be people's favorite. And but yeah, mo mostly it's me kind of on my own, which is the way I like it really. I'm not, you know, I prefer it that way. I don't particularly play well with others, so to speak. So um,
Control freak.
yeah, I guess so to an extent.
Yeah.
I mean, I just have a very particular vision about what I want when it comes to my music. So sometimes it's a case that people just don't see things the same way as me.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah,
And
like I say, it's deeply personal to me. So that's kind of the way I do it.
yeah,
And
yeah,
that's
I can
the reason I
understand.
do it in that
Yeah.
way.
And so tell me, I'm always sort of curious about the growing pains of sort of musicians going through that transitional phase of playing the local pub to maybe picking up in bigger venues and then obviously stepping up further. How did you find that sort of journey and transition then? Because you've obviously had such a huge year last year. Were you ready for that and the sort of stages that you were thrown thrust upon, or like had you sort of built up to that over your past couple of years?
Yeah, I think so. I think I was ready. I mean, you never know really, do you? You just have to kind of tackle these opportunities when they come.
Yeah,
But yeah, you know, the thing, I guess the misconception a lot of people has is that it's never like a, you know, straightforward upward climb.
yeah,
Like one day you'll be doing these huge theaters, another day you'll be playing in pubs. I mean, I still do it now.
yeah, yeah,
Um, but yeah, you know, I've done my fair share of kind of rubbish gigs where, you know, you sort of just have to power through and just play. And I think I've developed a certain confidence on stage, at least with myself. Maybe it doesn't seem that I'm confident, but I feel like I could pretty much play to anyone, anywhere at this point.
yeah, yeah. And how did you find that sort of transition though? Like, because obviously you will have played various size stages and like talking about the artists that you've sort of supported there in the past year, and you also done the BST Hyde Park with Pearl Jam. So
Yeah.
like, my God, a huge platform there with a very different audience as well, I suppose. How did you find that?
Yeah, I mean, with that gig, we weren't on the main stage. We were on one of the smaller stages,
Mm,
but yeah, I mean, it's just like anything. You just got to kind of do it, and the way that you develop these kind of skills is just by, you know, throwing yourself into it, and I guess it's called like exposure therapy or whatever. And yeah, for me, that's worked, you know, because when I
yeah,
started, I was, you know, it's not something that comes naturally at all to me, performing and being on stage. If I kind of just see it as a sort of you know, byproduct of what I really want to do, which is just play music to people. I know that sounds strange, but
Yeah. That's what it's all about at the end of the day, isn't it? You know, like regardless of how it's all packaged. I was talking with somebody actually, trying to think it was who it was, somebody recently, and they were just talking about the music industry itself and the beauty of, say, the days of when artists, recording artists used to sell albums, actually sold albums. You know, it was actually quite a small window when that actually happened because in the 50s and 60s, it was really about going out to see a live artist. And then 70s, 80s, maybe 90s, early 2000s is when we all sold tons of albums, but now it's back to the live performance thing. And that's ultimately what any musician was designed for. It was getting on the live stage, putting yourself in front of a crowd and honing your craft and selling it to the people that way.
yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong, I love performing and I love playing music in the moment in front of people. You know, that's the thrill for me. I know that sounds kind of contradictory, um but yeah, like there's nothing else like it, you know, being on stage and playing music in real time and improvising, and it's, you know, I think it's the closest thing to magic really that exists.
Yeah.
It's for me, you know. But yeah, when I'm on stage, I tend to go inside myself. You know, it's almost like a kind of you know, like a transcendent experience, you know. Like
Mm.
I kind of completely lose touch with everything and just exist in the moment. And yeah, that's what it's about for me, really.
Yeah, yeah. And what about the technical side of things then for example, those sort of performances in the bigger stages? How have you found the transition from saying having to do a smaller gig to larger venues? Have you have to think differently about the equipment you're using or the sound and the impact on that, for example, on for you as a live performer?
I mean, I don't think I've necessarily changed the equipment I've used or anything. I mean, the thing about those kind of shows is the sound is always just amazing.
Yeah,
Like you play those big rooms, it's just such a treat, like being on stage and being able to hear everything. And, you know, sometimes when you play in less, like, you know, for example, pubs or smaller type venues, you kind of have to rely on the PA, and the equipment might not be
yeah,
good and the monitoring might not be that good. But when you play in these huge theaters and stuff, the sound is always just perfect. And it's for me that's like, you know, that makes it so much easier.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And out of curiosity, then, I want any sort of photographs I've seen you in so far. You've always been holding a vintage or a vintage style guitar. What do you tend to use or play?
So when I do these support tours on my own, I play a 55 Gibson ES 125.
Okay.
It's probably the guitar you've seen in the pictures. But when I'm with my band, I play a Les Paul typically.
Yeah.
But yeah, like you say, they're all vintage inspired. I mean, that the other guitar is a vintage guitar, but yeah, like, you know, I just love that old sound and old style of playing really. So
And
that's why.
what are you playing through?
For the last couple of years, I've been using a Lazy J J20 combo, which is kind of like a Fender Tweed Deluxe style amp, but it's also got, you know, a character of its own.
Yeah. And is that a clean platform amp? Is there an overdrive channel on it?
No, it's just got one channel. Well,
Yeah.
there's you know, there's a bright and normal channel like on a vintage Fender. But yeah, essentially it's just got one sound, and you just turn the volume up, and there's, you know, a dial to adjust the tone.
Yeah. Old
That's
school.
great, really. Yeah.
And what sort of pedals or what pedal do you use then for like a bit of drive?
Um, I mean, I only really use a pedal sparingly, but I used to use the Lazy J Cruiser pedal, I think it's called. But I've been using like a Klon
Yeah.
copy recently.
Yeah. Yeah. And so what can we expect then on the Joanne Shaw Taylor tour? Obviously, she's a quite a hefty artist to perform alongside. So
Absolutely, yeah.
I think I caught you with Beth Hart earlier in the year. You were doing like an acoustic set with Beth. What have you got planned for the JST shows?
Yeah, I mean, it'll be quite similar to the Beth Hart shows, I guess. It would just be me on my own, and
Yeah.
I had another guitar player on that tour. That was Joe, the person I mentioned before.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, it'll just be me and my guitar really singing my songs. Although the London show is going to be with my band. That's the only exception. But the
Okay.
rest of them will be just me and my guitar.
And beyond the JST shows, what else are you lined up for yourself in 2024?
Um, I'm just trying to play as much as possible, really. That's my main goal for this year, just to keep playing, to develop my audience in the UK, also to expand to Europe and do more stuff over there. I kind of dipped my foot into that last year. But yeah, certainly this year I'd like to really make some progress with that. And also to try and at least get the gears in motion to do another record. That would be great as well.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And what did you take away from sort of the likes of the tours that you performed on last year with some of the artists, like working with the likes of Beth or Robert Cray and Kenny Wayne Shepherd, from an outsider perspective, say working up close with them? What was that like?
The thing that's really kind of blown me away about all these tours is just how chill and humble all these people are.
Hmm.
I mean, obviously they all have completely different personalities. Beth is very intense and very full on, but at the same time, she was extremely supportive and kind, and as was Robert Cray and Joanne Shaw Taylor when I did a few shows with her at the end of 2022. Yeah, they've just been really, really nice and really supportive, and and the crew as well. Everyone just wants to make it as easy as possible for you, and obviously it's in their interest for everything to run smoothly as well. And it's just, it's amazing to see that the higher up the food chain you go, so to speak, the more friendly and supportive people are.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's great to see as well. I'm sure that's a calming influence once you get there, because I'm sure it can be quite intimidating initially, thinking you're taking these things on to find that you're it's like a bridezilla type situation, but the people are actually quite chilled and quite down to earth and quite
Yeah,
human.
definitely. I mean, these guys have nothing to prove, right? They're
Yeah,
doing it. It's the people who at the bottom who have a chip on their shoulder who feel they need you know, to be difficult and to have an ego and stuff. But these people don't need to because they've got the goods and they're out doing it.
yeah, yeah. And so, any sort of boxes you want to tick, sort of anything you'd love to achieve over the next couple of years, anybody you would love to play with?
Um, yeah, I mean, like I say, I just want to keep doing as many shows as I can and keep expanding to new territories. I'd love to play in America at some point.
Mm.
Um, but yeah, in terms of people I'd love to play with, like, you know, Derek Trucks, Joe Bonamassa. I mean, Eric Clapton obviously is like my probably my biggest living hero. So to play with him would be like a dream come true, but I don't, he's getting old now, so I don't know how lucky he is. But
Never say never. Never say never.
yeah, all those guys, Gary Clark Jr., Marcus King, you know, all these people I'd love to play with any of them really.
Yeah, the blues genre is in a really strong position, isn't it? You always sort of fear from time to time about who's going to be the next torchbearer to carry it and etc. But there's just constantly seems to be a plethora of talent coming through.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of the thing about our time, isn't it? Or this time. There's so much stuff out there and so many people doing it. It's amazing that there is so much choice and so many people who, and just talking about guitar players and stuff, you go on Instagram and there's,
Oh yeah,
kids who've been playing for like 2 years who can play exactly like Steve Ray Vaughan or
yeah.
whoever. And it's just amazing to see. And yeah, I mean, I think the music is in a good place. Um, and there's lots of people doing it and taking it in different directions. And it's really great to see.
Yeah, it's absolutely fantastic. Well, look, Connor, I won't keep you much longer because I know you're probably busy. So, look, thank you very much for your time, man. Best of luck on the tour. I'm sure you'll have an absolute blast.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for having me. It's been a pleasure.
No, not at all, not at all. We'll talk again down the line. I'm sure next time you're popping out another album. So, look, best of luck for 2024, man. We'll keep an eye out for you.
Thank you. I appreciate
Okay.
that. Take
Take care of
care.
yourself. Thanks, man. Take care.
Bye.
Bye now.